My name is Eli Beiler. I am 87 years old, and I have lived on this land my entire life. I was born in this valley. I farmed this same soil since I was 9 years old, walking behind a plow horse before the sun had fully decided to rise. My wife and I raised our children here. We buried our parents here. And I tell you this not to be sentimental. I tell you this so you understand where what I'm about to say comes from. It doesn't come from a book or a study I read somewhere. It comes from 87 years of waking up on this land and doing the same things the people before me did, because those things worked, and because we were paying close enough attention to notice. I've never taken a sleeping pill, never swallowed an antacid, never had a prescription for pain. Not because I've been lucky or sheltered. I've had 3 broken bones. I've worked in weather that would make most people weep. The body has been tested hard over the years, and it has held, and I believe the morning is a large part of the reason why. So let me tell you about the morning. My morning, the one I've been doing, in one form or another, since before most of you were born. The first thing, and this one always surprises people, is that I don't use an alarm clock. Haven't used one in over 65 years. I know what you're thinking. That's fine for a farmer with no schedule. I understand that. I'm not asking you to throw your alarm out tonight, but I want you to think, just for a moment, about what that alarm is actually doing to your body every single morning. While you sleep, your brain moves through cycles of roughly 90 minutes each. Light sleep, deep sleep, REM, then back toward waking. At the end of a full cycle, your body begins preparing itself to come to consciousness on its own. Cortisol rises slowly. Core temperature creeps up. Your mind is already turning the corner toward morning. An alarm clock cuts that off, hard and sudden. When a loud noise hits your ears mid-cycle, your nervous system reads it as a threat. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline, the same chemicals it releases when something is trying to hurt you. Research on what's called the cortisol awakening response confirms that abrupt awakenings produce sharp, dysregulated hormone spikes that natural awakenings do not, and that this dysregulation carries through the day as fatigue, poor concentration, and elevated stress. And then people wonder why they're exhausted before noon. Well, there it is. On this farm, we wake with the light. By the time I open my eyes, I've finished my last sleep cycle naturally. My mind is already clear, not groggy, not startled, just awake, the way waking is supposed to feel. If you can't go to bed earlier, then I'm asking for something smaller. Move your bedtime back by 30 minutes. That's all. Do it consistently for 2 weeks. Your circadian rhythm is not fixed. It's responsive. It learns. And when it learns the new time, your body will begin waking on its own before the alarm sounds. My father used to say, "The man who wakes rested is already 10 steps ahead of the man who wakes tired, regardless of what happens the rest of the day." He was right. He was always right about the simple things. The second thing I do, the very moment my feet touch the floor, before I've said a word to anyone, is walk to the basin and wash my face with cold water. Not cool, cold. In January, that water comes up from our well, and I am not going to pretend it's comfortable. It is not comfortable. But here is what's happening in your body the moment that water hits your face. There's something called the mammalian diving reflex, an ancient hardwired response that fires when cold water contacts the skin around your eyes and forehead. Your heart rate slows. Blood redirects toward your brain and vital organs. It happens in seconds, and the clarity it produces is immediate. The vagus nerve activates, shifting the body toward the parasympathetic state. The fog of sleep lifts faster than any cup of coffee could ever lift it. The trigeminal nerve, which covers the face and connects directly to the brain's arousal centers, responds to the cold as well. That's why it feels like someone has turned the lights on inside your skull. Researchers studying deliberate cold exposure therapy have documented all of this. Clinics now charge significant money for controlled sessions that replicate what a basin of well water does for free. My people have known it for 200 years. We just didn't have a name for it. And beyond the physiology, a man who meets the cold without flinching in the morning carries that composure into everything that follows. It is not about the water. It never was. The third thing is a drink I've had every morning for over 50 years, and my mother had it before me. I'll tell you what it is plainly. Raw apple cider vinegar, not the clear filtered kind on most grocery shelves. Raw, unfiltered, with what's called the mother, the cloudy living culture that forms during fermentation and is usually the first thing a manufacturer removes because it looks unusual. 2 tablespoons in a full glass of room-temperature water, a spoon of raw honey, sometimes a pinch of ground ginger, stirred, drunk slowly before anything else. Now I want to be honest with you about what the science actually says, because I think honesty builds more trust than enthusiasm. A 2025 meta-analysis published in Frontiers in Nutrition reviewed 7 controlled trials involving over 460 participants and found that daily apple cider vinegar consumption significantly reduced fasting blood sugar and HbA1c levels in people with type 2 diabetes, an average reduction in fasting blood sugar of close to 22 milligrams per deciliter. The mechanism is the acetic acid slowing the breakdown of complex carbohydrates in the gut, producing a lower and more gradual rise in blood glucose after meals. The American Heart Association reviewed the evidence in 2024 and confirmed these modest but real effects, while rightly noting that most individual studies have used relatively small groups and that this is not a substitute for medical care. I am not a doctor. I'm not telling anyone to replace their medication with a glass of vinegar water. I'm telling you what my family has done for generations and what careful research is beginning to confirm. Beyond the chemistry, though, what I value most about this drink is what it represents. Every morning before the day has asked a single thing of me, I make a deliberate choice to do something genuinely good for my body. That act sets the tone. You've already told yourself what kind of person you intend to be today before the world has had any say in the matter. It is a small thing, and it is also everything. The fourth thing is going to sound like the simplest so far. Every morning before breakfast, I walk out onto the grass with no shoes. My mother sent us outside this way when we were children. No explanation, no scientific justification, just the knowledge that it was good for you, that it settled something in a child that nothing else quite did. Researchers now call this earthing or grounding. The Earth's surface carries a mild negative electrical charge, and when bare skin contacts the ground, the body can absorb free electrons from that surface. These electrons function as antioxidants, neutralizing free radicals that accumulate during normal metabolism and contribute to inflammation and tissue aging. A 2020 review in the journal Explore found evidence of reduced inflammation markers, improved sleep quality, lower cortisol, and reduced chronic pain in grounded individuals. I want to be straightforward. Most of these studies are small, and the scientific community considers the evidence promising, but not yet conclusive. I say that not to undermine what I'm describing, but because you deserve accuracy, not just a good story. What I can tell you from 87 years of doing this every morning is that something in the body recognizes the contact, and the science, imperfect as it still is pointing in the same direction my family pointed 2 centuries ago without a laboratory. But the part no paper will ever capture is this. When you stand on the earth in the early morning, before the noise, before the devices, something happens in the mind that has nothing to do with electrons. You remember what you are. Not a job, not a list of obligations. A living creature on a living planet, breathing air that has been breathed by every human being who ever walked this earth before you. My people call that gratitude. I found it to be the most useful thing I carry into the rest of the day. And it costs nothing. It requires no equipment. It asks only that you slow down long enough to let it reach you. I've spoken with people who say they don't have time for this, and I understand the pressures of a different kind of life. I'm not dismissing that, but I would ask you this. Do you have 5 minutes? Because 5 minutes on the grass, barefoot, before the morning rushes in, that is all I'm asking. Most people spend longer than that, staring at a screen before they've even stood up fully. The trade I'm suggesting is a different one, and I believe it pays better. The 5th thing is the one that surprises people most when I tell them. For the first hour after I wake, I do not speak. Not to my wife, not to anyone. I move through the early chores in complete silence, letting the hands work while the mind does what it needs to do in the quiet. The reason is practical, not mysterious. The mind upon waking is in a state researchers call hypnopompic, where the boundary between conscious and subconscious thought is thinner than at any other time of day. Creative thinking is more accessible here. Problems that were locked up the night before often open easily in this window. Your own judgment is more available to you in this first hour than at any other moment. The instant you reach for a device or begin a conversation, that window closes. You've handed your clearest hour of the day to someone else's voice. Over a long life, that is an enormous amount of time to give away. There's also a physiological reason. When you speak, even warmly, your brain activates social processing networks. Cortisol can rise from social engagement alone. By staying quiet for the first hour, you allow it to rise naturally and gradually, producing a more stable and focused mental state that carries through the whole morning. My grandfather said, "A man who knows how to be quiet in the morning knows how to think." I didn't fully understand that when I was young. I understand it completely now. I'll say one more thing about the silence, because I think it matters more now than it ever has before. We live in an age that is terrified of quiet. Every gap in noise is filled instantly. A phone, a notification, a voice from a screen. People sleep with sound running in the background. They eat with something playing. They can't sit in a car for 10 minutes without something talking at them. And I genuinely think, that this constant filling of silence is doing damage that we haven't yet fully measured. The mind needs space, the way the lungs need air. And the morning is the last reliable place most people have to find it. Guard it. The 6th thing is this. Before I eat anything, I work. The animals need feeding before I do. The wood needs splitting. There are always tasks, and they come before breakfast. On an ordinary morning, I've done 2 to 3 hours of physical labor before my first meal. That is not hardship. That is just the right order of things. After a night's sleep, you've been fasting for 8 to 12 hours. Insulin is low. Glycogen stores are partially depleted. When you perform physical work in this fasted state, your body turns to stored fat for fuel. It has no other choice. Multiple studies have confirmed that exercising before eating significantly increases fat oxidation compared to exercising after a meal, improves insulin sensitivity over time, and is associated with reduced risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. My family knew none of this by those names. They simply knew you worked before you ate, and that this was the correct order. The science has spent generations catching up, but here's the part no study will capture. When you work before you eat, breakfast becomes something entirely different. It becomes a real reward, earned, not habitual. Your hunger is genuine. The food tastes different. The satisfaction is different. Most people in the modern world eat without ever being truly hungry, and I think that is a quiet kind of loss that touches more than just digestion. I'm not asking you to farm. I'm asking you to try moving your first meal back by 1 hour and using that hour to move your body. Give your metabolism something to do before you feed it. It will respond. It was built to respond. We just stopped asking it to. And the seventh thing, the last one, I have never in my life drunk a cup of coffee, not once. My father told me when I was 12, Eli, anything you cannot function without is something that owns you. I did not raise you to be owned by anything. I've thought about those words nearly every morning since. Instead, I drink bone broth every morning, made from beef or chicken bones simmered overnight, 12 hours at least, often more. When bones cook for that long, the collagen in the connective tissue breaks down into gelatin, releasing amino acids, primarily glycine, proline, and glutamine. Glycine has received serious scientific attention. Studies show that around 3 grams taken before sleep measurably improves sleep quality, reduces next-day fatigue, and improves cognitive performance. A cup of long-simmered broth contains somewhere between 0.5 gram and 1.5 grams, depending on preparation, less than a concentrated supplement, and I think it's important to say that honestly. But it is a real, whole food source of something most people in the modern diet are chronically short on. Glutamine supports the gut lining. Proline and hydroxyproline help the body build and repair its own connective tissue. And it is warm, and it is nourishing, and it is the kind of thing your body recognizes as food in a way that a capsule never quite can. Coffee, by contrast, works by blocking adenosine receptors, the receptors that register tiredness. It doesn't create energy. It delays the signal of exhaustion, and when it clears those receptors 4 to 6 hours later, all the accumulated tiredness floods back at once. That crash you feel every afternoon? That's the debt coming due every single day. I'm not saying coffee is poison. Research on moderate consumption is genuinely mixed, and I have no argument with anyone who drinks it thoughtfully. But I have never needed it. My body wakes because I have slept fully. It has energy because I have nourished it honestly. And the morning does not require chemical assistance. If yours does, I gently suggest the problem is not the morning. The problem is everything that came before it. So, those are the 7 things. No alarm clock, cold water, apple cider vinegar, bare feet on the earth, 1 hour of silence, work before eating, bone broth instead of coffee. 7 things this family has done on this land, through every season and every generation, for as long as anyone can trace it back. A doctor, when I describe these practices, sometimes tells me he cannot fully explain why they work as well as they appear to. I've heard that from more than one of them over the years, and I think the honest answer is that they were never trained to look in places like this. The knowledge that accumulates over 200 years of close, careful, quiet living on the same piece of ground doesn't appear easily in a medical school curriculum, but it appears in the people who carry it. You can see it in how they age, in how they move, in the quality of their attention. It shows up in the body, and the body does not lie about these things. I'm not asking you to do all 7 tomorrow. That is not how anything lasting is built. I'm asking you to try one. Pick the one that surprised you most, the one that made you think, even briefly, that you'd never considered it before. Do it honestly every morning for 7 days, and then tell me whether something feels different, because I already know what you're going to say. I've watched it happen my entire life. The land doesn't lie, the body doesn't lie, and the morning, if you will let it, will not lie to you either.